Housekeeping. Yes, it is. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are in the world today when you see this. My name's Barbara Hayward, and if you've watched our first episode, you will know that I am a relinquishing or a birth mother. My child was taken away in 1970, and I just want to explain a little bit why I really want to do these podcasts. My son was 43 when he contacted me, and about 6 months later, I went to a counsellor, a much needed counsellor. And I was devastated by the things that she told me, absolutely devastated, because I was under the assumption that everything that had been told to me was true and right and all that. And what I found out, that there was not one thing I was told except he was going to a good home was the truth. And I was 60 when I had to find out what the truth is. And so talking to friends and their experiences with all the lies that were taught to us and told to us, that it was a good thing we were doing, you know, there'd be no problems afterwards, and we weren't told about the breakdowns and the suicide attempts and the longing for the child and all else that happened. So I've decided to now come in and give the uncensored truth, the things that I wished I had known way back then, the things that would have made such a big difference in my life. And it's too late now for me, but I also want other women of my age group to know that we were lied to and what the lies were and what we're starting to do now to right the wrongs. And no matter what country you're in, the lies were there, and they're the same lies, just maybe in a different form. So with that, I know that I'm looking down, and I'd like to put up a disclaimer. This video is intended for education and documentary purposes. The content within this video contains themes that some people may consider triggering, offensive, or disturbing. The intent is not to disrespect viewers or any individuals spoken about herein. Viewer discretion is advised. About 6 years ago, I had moved back to Melbourne from Perth, and I was given a couple of phone numbers to give out, to phone. And one was a place called Vanish, and they are a big group in Melbourne. And for the support part, they gave me the phone number of an organisation called ARMS, ARMS. And I rang ARMS and left my message, and nervous as anything, and nothing happened. And nothing happened, and then nothing happened. And then one Saturday morning at 10 o'clock, I get a phone call from a lady called Jo Fraser. Oh, look, Barbara, I'm sorry, you know, for the delay. I run a support group, and just by chance, we've got one this afternoon. Would you like to come? And I said, absolutely. And that began the journey of the next stage of learning. Jo is a lady that's come out the same circumstances, so knowledgeable, and I tell her that all the time. And the thing I understand is she's been in the movement a long time as an activist, as somebody supporting, helping, and looking out for our needs. And there is something that I would like Joe to answer a little later, and I will ask the question now. Joe is part of an organisation called ARMS, Association of Relinquishing Mothers. We don't relinquish, they're taken. And that's the uncensored truth. They're taken. And she has many roles over the years, and she's part of the committee, of course. So I really hope that you learned so much from Joe that it will get you excited about learning new organisations and what they do and what they can do to help. So Joe, thank you so much for being my first guest speaker. There was no one else I wanted bar you today, because in so many ways you saved my life. You gave me a platform to speak, and you allowed my voice to return. And the knowledge you have, and I keep telling you, and you go, no, but you are very knowledgeable. And she's an ex-teacher, and that will tell you a little bit as well. So Joe, can you start us off, please, today by sharing some of your story as to circumstances around your baby being taken?
Yes, thanks, Barbara, and I'm honoured to be on your podcast with you. I was 17 when I got pregnant. I was at the beginning of year 12 at a private girls' school. So it didn't go down terribly well that I was pregnant. It didn't go down well with my parents either, for that matter. I was taken out of school. In those days, the school year was 3 terms. So I was taken out of school in May at the end of first term, and my son was born at the end of July. And then halfway through September, I went back to school to finish year 12 for third term, not without some argument from the school, but fortunately one of the teachers was very persuasive in allowing me to go back to school. So I had Tim, as he is now known, on the 28th of July, which happened to be my parents' 20th wedding anniversary. And I had him at Queen Vic Hospital. From the time my parents found out that I was pregnant, Dad told me he was absolutely disgusted with me, tore strips off me. And I now realise that I basically went into little girl mode. I made no decision. I wasn't offered the choice of making any decisions for myself. My parents found out I was pregnant. Mum took me to her gynecologist, who delivered me and my 3 brothers. And I remember sitting there in the room with her next to Mum, and Mum saying to the gynecologist, "I don't understand why she's done this to us." And then I was hidden away at home. Nobody was told. Obviously, a few things get out here and there, but my best friend at school knew. Supposedly nobody else at school knew about it, but as I say, rumours go around. My grandparents, till the day they died, never knew that Tim existed. My aunties and uncles, cousins, nobody knew anything. And if anybody came to the house, then I would go up to my bedroom. And if it was likely to be somebody very close who would want to say hello to me, I would go to bed and pretend that I was sick. And then I had Tim at Queen Victoria Hospital on the 28th of July, 1971. Didn't see him. Certainly didn't hold him. It never occurred to me. I was in a private room. Absolutely did not enter my head that I really could have got up out of bed and walked down the corridor to try and find out where the nursery was and see if I could work out which baby he was. Didn't enter my head, because as I say, I just went into little girl mode, and nobody told me I could do that. And they certainly would have discouraged me anyway.
Exactly.
And when it was obvious that his birth was imminent, and this is back in the days of lying on flat on your back with your legs in stirrups and all of that sort of thing, I closed my eyes because I knew I shouldn't look at him because he wasn't mine. And I could hear all of the things going on, obviously felt him being born, and I still lay there with my eyes closed. So they didn't have to put a pillow over my head or a sheet up or tie me to the bed like so many other girls and young women had done to them. I was too compliant. They said the time that he was born, 11:21 p.m. And then he was taken away. And I didn't see him for 19 years.
So where was it and when was it that you were given the papers to sign, and who was there with you?
My father took me back to Queen Vic Hospital, I think about 6 weeks later, although thinking about it now, it must have been earlier than that because you have 30 days to change your mind. Not that a lot of young women were told that, and I honestly don't remember if I was told that or not. I know it's on the papers, but whether it was pointed out to me is another matter. But Dad and I went to the office at Queen Vic, and a man sat there, and presumably a social worker, and interviewed me and asked me a lot of questions, talked to Dad, and then said to me, "Do you want to give him a name? It looks like you care if you give them a name." And because I had supposedly known in my head that he wasn't mine, my thought was, I can't give him a name that I like. So I sat there, and I'm not going to say any of the names that I thought of in case anybody gets offended, but I thought of a couple of names, one of which happened to be the name of my father's business partner. And then I thought, no, I can't call him that because then every day Dad goes to work, he would think about him. I thought of a few other names, and I was obviously taking too long. I was just sitting there, a little girl, scared out of her brain, looking down at her lap. And eventually the man said, "Do you want me to give him a name?" And I just nodded, couldn't say anything. And he said, "I'll give him my son's name." So he wrote that down. We talked about a few more things. Then he turned the paper around for me to sign, and he'd given him the name Michael. And Michael had always been one of my favourite boys' names right from when I was a young girl. But I wasn't going to say, no, that name, or don't do that, or change that, or I wasn't going to say anything. So I just signed it, and then Dad and I drove home, and that was the end of that.
How were you feeling around that time?
Oh, I was devastated. I cried every day, always by myself. I do remember after a long time it got to the point where I didn't cry every day. I just cried every second day, or every few days, or then every now and then. And but I never thought, oh, I should do something about this. I should try and find him. I should fight against whoever. I just didn't think. I just felt.
Because that's what you were taught to do, is keep your opinions to yourself. You don't have choices. In fact, what I believe it's called is you didn't have a voice.
True.
They can't stop the feeling. So how did it come about that you actually met him?
Well, when he, a couple of times over the first probably 12 or 14 years, I actually wrote a letter to the Department of Community Services, which is where adoptions, the adoption department was at the time, just saying that I just wanted to find out if he was okay. I didn't want to wreck anybody's lives or make waves or anything like that. But I just wanted to make sure that he was all right, and I never sent them. Right. And then after he turned 18, I wrote a letter to the department and said that I would like to try and make contact with him. So I was given a compulsory, what they called counselling session.
Yes.
Just asking you a whole lot of questions. And she said that what they did was write a letter to the adoptee and say that they wanted to speak to them about a private issue. And if the letter wasn't responded to, they would write again. And then if that wasn't responded to, they would send a registered letter just to make sure that, they were contacting the person.
So I'll just interrupt. So what year was this, roughly?
1990.
Right. So some of the laws in Victoria or Australia had changed by
yes, they had.
Okay. Now,
in 1984, they changed.
Right. And I find the next part of your story incredibly fascinating. If I was to be envious of anything, this would be it. And I do know that all our stories are very different, how they unfold, and none is better than the other or worse, it just is. So can you share that part after you've met Tim?
Well, fortunately, Tim did agree to have contact with me. He was 19 and he actually, talk about thin threads, which we often do. He was doing a gap year after having done year 12 and was travelling around Australia with 2 friends. No mobile phones, no emails, no computers, all of that sort of thing. He happened to come home for 2 weeks, during which the letter arrived from Department of Services saying that I wanted to make contact with him, which he agreed to. So the woman from the department rang me and gave me their home phone number. And I had that number on a piece of paper, and one night I thought, right, I've got to ring. And I walked up and down the room with the phone in my hand and the piece of paper in the other hand for probably half an hour, just saying, God's sake, just ring the number. And I finally did. And Tim's adoptive mother answered. And I said, oh, my name's Jo Fraser. So-and-so from the Department of Community Services gave me your number. I don't know what else to say. Wow. And she, of course, knew who I was because they had been given my details. And then she said that Tim was away and had gone away again before I made the phone call, was coming back at Christmas. So we agreed that we would meet in January, which is what we did. Tim and his adoptive mother and I met at a restaurant near where I live and had lunch together, and it was really nice. We connected very well and very easily, and then we about 2 weeks later, I took my parents and my husband and my next son, who was 3 at the time, down to their home to meet his adopted father as well. And then, so we did that. And then not long after, we met his adoptive brother and sister as well. And we just all got along really well together. I've been very fortunate that I and the rest of my family get along really well with his adoptive parents and with his brother and sister, and that it's been an easygoing relationship. And I do understand that's far from what happens with a lot of people. But yes, as I say, we're very fortunate.
Are you still in communication with him?
Yes, it's now been, well, he's just turned 50. 6 months ago,
Gosh.
and I met him when he was 19. So for 31 years we've known each other, and we don't. Well, he's now living in New Zealand.
Right.
He married a New Zealand woman, met her over here, and then they moved over there. And the boys and I went over for their wedding, and about 14, 15 years ago. And we don't communicate as often as I would like to. But and sometimes it's months and months and months and months, and sometimes it's not. But whenever we do, it's, as I said, it's a really easy communication that we have.
That's wonderful. And I'm going to make an assumption here that the 31 years hasn't been constantly smooth sailing, that you've had ups and downs and been overwhelmed and had heartache and questioning and all those things that I think people don't understand, that the moment you meet your child, who is now a man or a woman, it's not all love and hugs and what have you. It's a real journey in there.
And it also doesn't eradicate the previous however many years.
No.
That it was total hell.
Yeah.
Because you didn't even know if they were alive, let alone well cared for, loved in a family.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've met a lot of birth mothers thanks to ARMS, because, to be honest, before my son started coming back, I'd never heard from anyone that had had a baby taken away. And so with that true isolation, I find your story so heartfelt. And then I understand what goes on underneath, where a lot of people will hear your story and say, well, where's the issue? Where's the problem? What are they bitching about? But it is that real deep-seated pain. What I've learned from you, a course that you put on, is it's disenfranchised grief is what you go through.
Yeah.
So he's still there, which is really good. And I know you joined ARMS because, at the end of the day, that's where I met you. When did you join, and why? Why did you join a support group?
When I had the counselling session with the woman from the department, she gave me some literature, one of which was a brochure to ARMS. And I can't remember exactly what I did, but I imagine that I would have rung somebody whose name and phone number was on the brochure, and was told that they have support group meetings. In fact, ARMS has had support group meetings on the first Saturday of every month since 1982, when it was first founded, almost without exception.
Golly gosh.
Which is, it's 40 years this year.
That's accolade.
Yes, it's huge. There's so many women that the organisation has helped. Back then, so this would have been in the very early 90s. They were meeting in St Francis Church in the city of Melbourne, and I went along, and there was a huge number of women there, great big circle of women talking about whatever it is they wanted to talk about to do with their situations. And I was fairly shy, so I didn't say very much. And because I got and get along so well with Tim's adoptive family, I found it quite disconcerting that so many of the women there really talked about their sons and daughters adoptive parents as if they were the devil incarnate.
Mm.
And I do understand that, unfortunately, there are a hell of a lot of people who have been adopted into families that were not suitable.
Yeah.
And were badly treated and worse. There are also a lot who have been adopted into good families,
Yeah.
and have had what they might call good lives.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that they don't feel that there's something missing from their lives. But because that was the only situation that I knew, I really felt uncomfortable in what was being said about a number of the adoptive parents. So it would not have been me to say, hey, listen, why are you talking like that? Or that's not my experience. So I just stopped going.
Right.
And I didn't go again for probably a small handful of years. And to be honest, I don't know why I started going back.
Right.
Yeah, I would be guessing. They said why, but I did, and they were meeting at a different place then. Pretty much, a lot of the same women, and I didn't have an issue with any of them. It was purely because I had a different experience, and I couldn't correlate my experience with what I was hearing.
Right.
So I started going back, and I'm really pleased that I did. I've made a lot of really good friends. I was asked to join the committee as secretary in 2011, and have been on it ever since. And and we decided to change our name probably about 4 or 5 years ago.
Right.
Because, as you said before, we didn't relinquish. Some women do feel that that's what they did. It was their choice completely to have their babies adopted.
Yeah.
Most of us don't feel that way. Relinquish means voluntarily giving up something.
Yes.
And the majority of us didn't have that.
No.
So we've changed it to, because we want the same acronym, Association Representing Mothers Separated by Adoption.
Oh, wow. That's good.
We think so.
That's good. Now, I really want to ask you a question. I do know the answer, but I want others to know the answer. When you rang me up that day to invite me to the support meeting, it was at the Queen Vic.
That's right, yeah.
Because the hospital had all the hospital at the back, and at the front it had like 3 stories, and it was maybe 20 feet by 20 feet, and that's where I guess the office was. Because I know that when I was taken there, you would drive around the back, so I had no idea about the front. Now, you said to me on the phone, now Barb, if you have trouble getting here, just give me a call and I'll come down and get you. I have to tell you that I did a double take on that, and I thought, well, how stupid does she think I am? I know how to walk. I've done that for a long time. And I just sort of thought that that was the dumbest thing I had ever heard. And anyway, a friend dropped me off, and there's a ramp that goes up the side and you go around the back. And all around it is steel and glass, a big shopping centre in Melbourne. And I put one foot on the ramp to go around. Now, would it be 30, 40 feet max between the front and the back? It took me 7 minutes to get up there. I just hyperventilated and the whole thing. So anyway, I finally got around the back, and I went upstairs, used the code, and I said, oh, look, I must have been crying or had been crying, because you said, did you have trouble getting here? And I said, I have no idea what happened. I said, I was fine until I put my step on the ramp. And can you explain, A, how you answered me, if you can remember, and what is all that about?
Well, I assume that I would have said to you that we think things are going to be easy until we get to them. And it's one thing to say, oh yeah, I can walk up that ramp, I can go in the door and go up to the meeting, but there is so much emotion involved in it. And we second guess ourselves all the time. And it's often a lot easier just to turn around and walk away.
Yeah. So when I walked in there, you said to me, I know, you had your baby here, didn't you, at Queen Vic? And I said, yes, I did. How did you know? And you said, every woman that has had a baby here cannot walk on that ramp, has trouble getting here. That's what I meant. And only afterwards did I understand. Now, why did that occur? Because I spoke to you and I never went to that part of the building. I couldn't grasp what had happened on the deeper level. So can you explain what happens on a deeper level, please?
Because we were told that we were wrong and we'd done the wrong thing, everybody was against us. A hell of a lot of shame and guilt was piled on top of us and obviously internalizes. And it's really difficult to work through that. It takes a hell of a long time to do it. And so when there are what we call triggers.
Right.
That might be that you're watching a perfectly happy film on TV and somebody says something that triggers even a subconscious memory or a conscious memory, and you just dissolve into tears, or you've got to switch it off, or you sit there if you're with other people internalizing it all and thinking, God, I wish the hell I could get out of here. And we do that so much and we squash down all of that. Once it starts coming up, it's really difficult. Mind you, it's much better coming out than staying in there.
Yeah.
Because the longer it stays in there and the further down it is, the more problems it causes emotionally, mentally, and physically. It's amazing how your mind can affect your body physically.
Yeah.
So for all of that, and that's a massive trigger to walk into the hospital where your baby was taken away from you.
Yeah.
I mean, I imagine that's probably got to be the biggest one.
Yeah.
For that to just be there all of a sudden in the forefront, and you've got to work out how to deal with it.
Yeah.
And as I said, sometimes it's easier to deal with it by walking away.
If it hadn't have been for you, I would never have understood that. I had no idea, and these are part of the lies that were told to us, Joe. The lie is it doesn't affect you. Well, it affects everything you do.
Yep.
From that moment until forever, and we weren't privy to that information, and so when things go wrong, we blame circumstances or we're not good enough or whatever, and not relate it back to time that all that memory is in the DNA that hasn't been removed.
The thing is that with a lot of women, the memories have been squashed down so far, they can't even remember the date of their baby's birth or what hospital they were in or whether they had a boy or a girl. All sorts of things. So it's a really difficult way to live your life.
Absolutely. Now, I don't know what I do without arms, to be honest, and I really love the fact that now, because of COVID, that we use Zoom. And that's the only way that because I live in New Zealand now, that I can participate in that. Is there going to be anything in the future where, because I think it's such a unique organisation, it is valuable on every level. Is there a way that maybe it can be opened up to other Australian women, or maybe even overseas?
Well, they say that there's a silver lining in everything, and COVID's silver lining was that we had to have our support group meetings on Zoom, which has meant that while a number of women that come or have been coming every month haven't been able to join us because they don't do computers, it has meant that we've been able to have women who would not ordinarily be able to join us. Once you moved to New Zealand, obviously you couldn't come to the support group unless you were visiting Melbourne. And as you said, you've been to quite a number of the support groups on Zoom. We've had women in ARMS in WA who have joined us. We had a member from the US has joined us, and from Queensland and from regional Victoria, as well as those in Melbourne as well. So it's really good to be able to, and Mildura, because we were running a support group up in Mildura for a few. And so some of them have been joining us as well, which has been really great. And it's, even though it's, you're looking at a screen and there's just a whole lot of squares of faces, I don't think it takes away on the support group itself. And this year, well, since Melbourne has become what they call COVID normal, where people are getting out and about again, and businesses are going, getting back into the office and so on. Unfortunately, the organisation that was allowing us to have our support group meetings there up until COVID aren't doing that anymore. So we're currently looking for another venue, but it's meant that we've still had 3 support group meetings this year on Zoom. We have, as I said, our meetings are on the first Saturday of every month, which means that the May meeting is the week before Mother's Day. That's our Mother's Day meeting. And so we always do something a bit special. The support group meetings usually go for 2 hours. We have it for 3 hours, and we either have a speaker or we do a special activity, and we give all of the women that come along a special rose with a little saying attached to it. And so we've organised a venue because we feel that that's important to actually meet in person for this one. So we do have one in a venue at the beginning of May, and then we'll try and find, unfortunately it costs too much. And we, like most not-for-profit organisations, live on the smell of an oily rag.
That's the one.
So we're going to, pull out all stops to try and find somewhere that we can meet in person. What we're going to try and do for the Mother's Day one and from there on is have members join in by Zoom as well.
Oh, wow.
It'll take a bit of working out how to do this, but hopefully just by me taking along my laptop, sending out the link to members and using their Wi-Fi, we hope that will be enough for us to be able to do that.
Great. Well, I could talk all day, and I just find your journey really fascinating. So can I say thank you so much for joining me today? There is so much I want to ask you, because I do know what you've been doing in the background with submissions and you know, the apology from the Australian government, the whole thing. And you've really got your thumb on the pulse certainly in Victoria. And I'd really, really love to invite you back, not too far away, because that's the educational part that I want people to know about, so that we now can be standing tall and proud. So with your permission, I will be getting you back. Now, how can people find you, Jo? I mean, how do our listeners, either our local listeners or our overseas listeners, how can they find you?
Well, they can. We have a website which is www.armsvic.org.au.
Right.
So it's armsvic.org.au. The email address is arms@armsvic.org.au, or they can ring 0409 442 701.
Right, great.
And
I've got an email, a Gmail attached to this program, and it's adoption, the uncensored truth @gmail.com. And so if you would like to write a letter or an email, and I could post that back over to you, if people are finding the other ways a little bit hard. So to our wonderful audience, thank you so much for joining us today. And Jo, again, thank you very much, and just keep up the good work, and in my opinion, just do it forever, whether your family likes it or not. And next week, we've got a special guest, and it's a New Zealand lady, and she's very interesting to listen to, and she has a great story of being finally, after all the years she struggled, of being validated and appreciated. So until then, goodbye, and keep well, keep safe, and be gentle on yourself. That's really, really important. See you next time. Bye.